of this kind of technology. There was a bit of a eureka moment as soon as we saw it, got them in, and it was like, we want that now, but we need to create the research ourselves. Like, if we want to be innovative, we want to make sure that we are actively researching, because we're a research-driven kind of department whereby everything is backed up with the science behind it as well. And we just wanted to make sure that really we got good knowledge behind it, and if the research isn't available to us, let's create it. Hence where this man comes in, who's he shares a nickname with Harry Maguire, a slabhead, so if anyone wants to call him slabhead throughout, just feel free to do so. So basically just a brief background around it, and I'm not just saying he's going to be supervised as well, but Josh has created the slides and that, so if there's any bouncy or any fancy animations, this is all Josh's expertise, like Mac uses, so you'll be able to see the difference between mine and his presentation. So basically been going through training, so we had catapult system, polar belts, sports code. So we varied in, so like last season we did a little case study, so the head coach at the time, the assistant, sat down and went, right, do you know, within training, your strikers have not scored a goal for 3 weeks in training, okay? And they haven't scored a goal in 3 weeks in games. How do you expect them to score goals in games when they're not practicing it in training? And he was like, what, really? Why? And you have to provide the evidence, and that's one small case study that really tried to heighten us. And then all of a sudden, and I'm not just, this might not have been work, it might have been fluke. Start practicing shooting and more finishing drills in training with the strikers, getting into the right positions. We then start to go on a winning streak because they're scoring more goals as well. Not saying that is completely the case, because that might be complete fluke. That's why it's a bit of a tagline to say it might not be right. But it's what inspired us to kind of come up with this process, really, because we want to inform our coaches to improve performance, and within a training environment, that's what we've got. But within match play, again, we're looking at different solutions. So when we went down to the championship, again, not just from a financial point of view, but from a transferring point of view, we wanted to use the system, like catapult system within games. So we looked at making sure we had them in games, so that then it was direct comparison across training and match play, because when you compare your track cab and what's the one the Premier League had just gone to now? Second Spectrum. So again, that shows how long we've been out of the Premier League, so I'm a bit jealous that you get to use Second Spectrum. But transferring between systems, you're always going, oh, what's it like compared to that? How does it translate between that? We were just like, let's get rid of that. We want to use it, and eventually where we'll want to get to is hopefully Playermaker in games and training as well, to marry that picture up. So we wear the catapult, the heart rate, and we get the Opta and stats information as well. But the Opta and stats, the sports code, we can't use that in training. We're not going to fit cameras around our training ground. We haven't got the finances to fund that, and also the cost of those implications there as well. So we're using different systems from a performance analysis point of view in our training and match play. So while the guys and the analysts will code some stuff up in sports code, actually the more detailed stuff that relates to kind of the technical load that we're talking about all comes from Opta and stats. So we were looking for a solution to try and help answer that and bring it all together. And again, we've got the research for that. And it was great that Mike did it, and I've not talked to Mike before setting this up, but there's the research for this, but we need to now create the research for Playermaker. And we've got the research for that. Told you the animations were great, by the way. So ultimately, GPS, valid, reliable, 2011 paper. Reliability GPS in games, brief reviews, 2013-14. Interoperator reliability, 2013. So these systems have been around a while. So we've allowed, like, not just academics to do it, but practitioners have now had a chance to be able to build up this research. Look at, I'm sure, like within our clubs, we've all had students or interns doing these projects that we want to go, right, here we go. We got one of our assistant sports scientists from Leicester, she did her study on the IMA use and the catapult and change direction. So we wanted to then look at the transfer of Playermaker with change direction as well. So all these kind of background build up to what Josh is going to present now, because ultimately this is one of the big solutions to the missing gap in the training lab that we wanted to find. And this is how we do it. So over to you, Josh.
Thank you, Steve. So first of all, my bigger project is going to be looking at the entire season's worth of technical training data and how different contextual factors might begin to impact that. But obviously, without the technology being validated yet, that's an important first step. So just designed a little protocol using data from UpToData last season to inform some of the passing distances that was going to be done during the protocol. So 13.2 metres being the average sequence distance across 4 of the 5 big European leagues last year, and 18.7 metres being the average pass distance. All the protocol required was 2 participants to firstly perform 20 one-touch releases with the dominant foot and then with the non-dominant foot, and repeating it again but performing a 2-touch release with the dominant and the non-dominant foot. Each trial was to be repeated 3 times at each distance, and that would actually produce hundreds of individual data points. So from a validity and reliability perspective, there's a lot to get through in the future.
Yeah, it was around 196 touches stroke releases that we did, and speaking as one of the participants, my legs were hanging off the technical loaders through the roof, so it just provided us with a lot of information to go back and actually justify is this system valid and reliable.
The number of reps was also rationalised through UpToData, so we looked back and saw that the average player per 90 minutes last season across those 4 leagues was required to perform nearly 46 touches per match and just over 31 passes, but in order to get a good enough data set, we thought it would be important to design a protocol that surpasses these demands, and that's why we came up with 20 reps per trial.
It's one of those, from a reliability point of view, this is one of the difficult things as sports scientists or performance analysts. We come through these kind of sports science undergraduate modules, so it's a lot to do with physical performance. So from a reliability point of view, can't say, and again, academics in the room might differ with me, but like 20 is like an ideal number for the reliability perspective. So it's like if we do reliability 3 times at 20, so we're actually tripling the amount of information we've got. While it's assessing a player's passing ability, we're actually really just testing the technology. We could have a mechanical foot that's literally just going like that, which we talked about trying to do in the lab, but we wanted to, you go from looking at pure validity in the lab environment, so like a mannequin foot constantly just kicking at the same movement velocity, the same distance, to ecological validity, right number of touches, number of passes, which we'll go on to in a bit, but we wanted to try and hit that middle ground where it was still outside on the pitch, but making sure that we control within our use of the system as well. So,
and it's just a couple of video examples just to demonstrate the kind of things that the participants are required to do. In the video on the right, I was instructing to say, if you don't feel confident in your ability to return that ball, just pick it up, put it down and play again, to try and keep the trials nice and controlled as possible. So there are just a couple of examples for the one-touch releases with the dominant and non-dominant foot, and the same again for the 2-touch releases. The participant rolled it in, and the next player was just a touch and a playback with both feet. I decided not to include a video of Steve's passing ability on there just to save him the embarrassment.
So with this again, so using Will Hopkins' lovely spreadsheets, which can be quite a bit daunting at first. So like Moran related to earlier, with these guys are claiming that it's 92%. I think the good thing about it is that we're independent. We're a club, we actually wanted to try and go and break it as much as possible. So I know Mike mentioned about the volleys which not detecting, which we found the same as well. But again, we feed that information back to the guys to try and improve it, and actually we're really happy with what we're seeing, probably happier than what we were expecting, to be honest with you. So overall validity, so we basically had Josh doing the count every time he touched, and then he's coded it up afterwards as well to make sure that actually, one, the count was right, review it on sports code, review it, and again, that's a different question that we'll come up to. And then we also had 2 devices on each foot as well, so a slightly different methodology, so we're looking at within device reliability as well. And while it's not on here, we also wanted to look at if there was any variation between dominant and non-dominant foot, because sometimes, Josh is a perfect example of it as well, like the non-dominant foot is definitely just for standing on. And I know that's different within some of the players that we work with, but this system, like the Playermaker guy said, it's going to be used in a broad spectrum. So as long as the players had at least 10 years of playing experience at, was it semi-professional and high-level amateur football, they were going to be participants. We'd love to use the professionals with this, but as we've already said, with the amount of kick-ins and what we're saying, we don't know truly what the technical load is on it yet. We've tried to avoid them, so we've got some semi-professional footballers, some university players, and but we're still recruiting. So this is still very, very much the big one. So for the overall touches, so number of touches, forgetting if it's a pass, if it's a release, near perfect. For the reliability perspective, it was high, so looking at that 0.96. And going on to the next one, so releases, again, near perfect. So we're using, for the ICCs, using the cones of exercise as well, and also using Vincent just to basically look at the ICCs. Apologies, I just got that mixed up. So overall releases 0.96, reliability 0.97, and then one touch release as well was probably a little bit lower, but as you can tell, it's not that massive. And when we broke all the individual drills down, which because we're still in the process of this, when the last participants were on Monday or Tuesday.
They're the most recent ones.
Most recent ones were on Monday or Tuesday, so we had to update it all. So we've seen a range anywhere between 0.89 to 0.99, and some of the players who were in the drills were like 100% spot on. So we're really excited about it, because ultimately that then means we're informing Josh's future studies, so when we look at the training drills and so on. However, as you can probably tell, and I'm sure everyone's already thinking it, it's quite a simplistic drill, very controlled, not really challenging, so it should be near perfect, which is great. The next part of the study, which means a little bit more work for our analysts as well, is we're looking at the validity and reliability during an open passing session. So within our warm-ups, we do a 10 by 10 metre box, 5 players, pass and move around it. So there's a player at each ball, pass and move, pass and move. So 10 minutes each time. There's a bit of a dynamic warm-up in there as well, pulse raiser. And our coaches are big on technical, so it fitted within their philosophy. So one of the reasons why we were able to implement it. Players wear the one unit, but what we're looking at now is also how it differs to the analysts. So the analysts will be coding up every touch and every release for each player that's within the drill, and they'll have to do that 3 times. So whereas Playermaker, we get the information instantaneously, and it's always going to be the same because of the objective data. These guys will then code it 3 times and basically look at the intra rate of reliability as well. And that's the same for the 11v11 match play. So we're trying to look at, again, we're trying to draw a graph of this, but it's easy to explain. Simplicity, low simplicity there, increase in complexity. So we want to look at it within a more challenging environment to then actually assess, does it change? So within small-sided games, and this is a perfect little picture here, when there's a tackle, when there's an interception, what actually happens with that? And our objective is to try and challenge the system to help these guys make it as good as possible so that when we use it, it's there. And if that work that we're doing at the club transfers across to you guys in other clubs, great. Okay? We want to basically know every little bit of detail that we're doing with the system in order to improve ourselves as well. Oh, is that the video? Sorry.
Just a screen grab of some of the examples of the drills that we're looking at.
So vantage point from end zone camera, just to make sure, again, you can see multiple drills. And the challenging bit of it is without multiple cameras as well, so these guys are trying to code up these very pixelated guys at the back as well. we're looking at one. Everyone will always code. The human eye and interpretation will code, but actually, can we help support them and save them time as well? So, I mean, just from a user point of view, how long did it take you to code this up?
A couple of hours.
A couple of hours, and then from Playermaker stuff using the XML.
Minutes.
So, from our point of view, when we're looking at staff's time, we want to make them as efficient as possible. So actually, if we want this information, Josh coded for 2 hours compared to just using Playermaker to get it in a couple of minutes. It's a better use of our time because then he can go help coaches answer more useful questions. Same in the in-house 11v11. So away kit, home kit, in-house game, and basically off we go. So the 11v11 was probably easier to code actually, wasn't it? Because one ball, whereas multiple balls in here, multiple movements. So it's looking at those different challenging environments and taking a step back from, well, it might not be as glamorous and exciting side of it. We need to understand this aspect of it first before we can really progress and answer those better research questions or more exciting research questions that we want to do. And that's just an example screenshot of Josh putting it in for one of the session drills that we're looking at as well.
And how much of a godsend it is as a performance analyst being able to do that in a couple of minutes as opposed to hours every day. Saves my eyes.
I think, like what Mike said as well, that independent external research is always good. So if it's not out there, we want to go create it. We want to be the ones trying to innovate and challenge what's accepted as well. I'll let Josh explain this because this is his pride and joy and his daily report that he gives out to all of us that we thoroughly enjoy, so off you go.
And something that we weren't able to do last season, obviously, because the analysts at the club were taking so much time in coding up training. Now we can just offer an extra insight into the coaches of just who's doing what in training alongside the physical report that Steve produces on a daily basis. So just to talk through it, greens are the goalkeepers. That was a challenge in itself. Yep. Blue are players during rehab, and the yellow just demonstrates an arbitrary threshold of one leg dominance. So I sit down with the assistant head coach and determined that anything above 80% using one leg was to be flagged, just to give a cue to the player the next day to say you need to work on your weak foot more. And that was in for total touches during the session and total releases also.
So from an anecdotal point of view, what we tend to find, so we have a lot of transference, I'm sure you guys know the clubs will do. 23s and 18s coming up to train with the first team sometimes, dropping back down and so on. So that transitions, it was really interesting. Anecdotally, and again, this is away from the research now, when we look at reports like this, whenever a younger player comes up to train with the first team, in their environment, okay, might be 70-30, releases 80-20. As soon as you come up to the first team environment, quicker tempo, quicker pace of the ball, everything goes up. So it's normally 90-10 we've seen as high as with some players where they're constantly just using their dominant foot because, and when we've spoken to them, they're like, I don't want to mess up, I can't use that foot, I need to use my dominant foot to make sure it's there. So it's really interesting to see those kind of insights now, stuff that we weren't able to see before, but we are now able to. Even little things like comparing left footers to right footers and who's more dominant. Nice weekly overview of the touch load. So like what Mike was showing again, this is like our team average and actually are we increasing it too much? So like the jump from week 16 to 17, massive. Did that have any implication? From a team point of view, there was no injuries because of this jump as well. So we're now looking further into the context of what actually composes that, and I know Grant will go into this, so I won't steal your thunder with this bit, but Grant will talk more about that kind of aspect later on. But what we now want to look at, especially with the release velocity stuff, so we've got players who, as daft it sounds with first team players, and this is one of the good things about working with not necessarily the highest quality of players, our assistant head coach, and you hear him on all the training videos, use your back foot, open up. So we can actually look at the surface of the foot now that they're using. And with some of the younger players, when it gets fizzed into them, they can't actually use their back foot. So they go back to the dominant foot, inside of the foot, biggest part of the foot. So then they actually have to adjust and move their body accordingly, which obviously has implications for their physical ability to change direction. So we're now challenging them to say, if he says back foot, can you use either the outside of your foot, whatever the assistant coach is challenging you to do, you should be doing that. And with the release velocity now, which we're still trying to work out the best way to integrate it and build it in, we can see surface of the foot as well, which has been an improvement for us. And top some of the release velocities within the training session, we've seen around that 20 to 22 metres per second mark as well, just for a bit of context to what you guys seen earlier. And it's just provided us with that little bit of scope.